Welcome to my YouTube channel, Manameni Nalame, Mental Health with Anne, a bilingual channel in Tamil and English. In today's guest room section, I have with me Solomon AGAJE, a registered psychologist in Alberta, Canada. Solomon has several years of experience and expertise working in the field of mental health with individuals, groups, and families with mental health concerns. Solomon also has extensive experience and knowledge working with families and individuals, immigrants and refugees from East Africa. Join me in conversation to learn about the work that Solomon does. What do you think, not only as counselors or mental health professionals, but whether it's children's services, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the education system, largely what would you say service providers should have in mind when working with immigrant populations or refugees, specifically within the African community?
Just to be specific, I want to highlight my learning, my own experience working with immigrant outreach society and what had worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, the current systems, the current mental health systems that is prevalent or that's in place, I believe is, again, I work in that system somehow, so I don't want to dismiss it. It's doing the best it can, but it's not doing enough. So the current access mental health triaging system is not best fit for immigrants for a number of reasons, right? I talked about the unavailability of culturally appropriate, language specific and safe services. Because because the system is not hiring immigrants, is not hiring qualified immigrants, because it's very hard for them to get into and to integrate into the system, and so because of that they don't feel safe, and there is also kind of language barriers for them. They don't speak the language, even when let's say, they are able to go to a family doctor and say, they are struggling. Most immigrants describe anxiety and depression in a very somatic, physiological symptomatology. So they don't get that appropriate referral. So kind of fall into the cracks. And so what we had found is to provide, culturally appropriate and language specific interventions. And what that means is interventions that respects people's cultures, right? For example, in where I'm from in Ethiopia, and I'm from Ethiopia, and so it's a collective culture. So it's not individualistic culture. It's not a culture based on individual autonomy. People get services in a collective way, in a very interdependent way. So people visit people, in groups, and so we have these wellness groups that people go and visit people in where they live, where they feel safe, right?
Yeah.
A type of service that understands their pre-trauma experiences. We know how refugees and immigrants from Ethiopia and Eritrea and East Africa land here. So we understand their journeys and we can relate with them with that understanding and compassion. And so, my advice is, to take into account how we can provide services that are culturally fit, that are, culturally sensitive and appropriate language-wise. And the other kind of learning is any successful, mental health or psychosocial intervention for Ethiopians and Eritreans and East Africans in that area, because I can only speak about that area because that's where I work. It needs to take into account the importance of natural supports, the importance of informal networks, the importance of faith-based institutions, the importance of including community leaders. And so when people are in crisis, when people are going through distress, whether it's family related or mental health related, they don't go to the mainstream services because of the challenges I highlighted earlier. And so they go to their pastor, they go to their priest, or they go to a community leader. So what we have been doing in IOS is train those people so that they can identify mental health issues, so they can identify trauma patterns, so they can be able to refer at least to us or other appropriate services.
Okay.
And so I think that notion should be taken into account. And the other option is, we talk about stigma a lot, but in my learning, when people are provided with culturally appropriate and services that take into account those informal and natural supports, the stigma becomes a less important factor. And so I think, I don't want to blame the victims. So I don't want to really kind of so if the services are available, and I think again, we need to take into account and be respectful of people's cultures, people's lifestyles, people's experiences and their needs, instead of expecting them to fit into certain categories that they might have a hard time fitting. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're speaking to true inclusivity, right? Because we, again, not to blame or shame anyone, or right, it is about being really inclusive and recognizing that right now we aren't inclusive, and actually the onus is on the immigrant or refugee to right, pretty much change themselves to fit in, which doesn't happen that easily. It is a process which I guess happens over generations, and one shouldn't have to lose their own identity or who they are to an extent, right, where it's hard to even know who you are. Yeah, I hear you, absolutely. Thank you, Solomon, for that. What would you say, Solomon, not just as a therapist, but as a man from a successful immigrant from Ethiopia, and a family man, a father, a husband, a fellow human being to people in your community? What would you say to men, women, young folks, young children who come to Canada and who continue to come to Canada for them to succeed as immigrants and refugees? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I personally, at least on my journey, what had helped me was to commit and kind of be specific what I was wanting to achieve, and also to be dedicated to that value, dedicated to committed to that goal. And so some kind of value committed action, some kind of goal committed action might be an anchor, because the storm is quite tough. The challenges are quite difficult. So your ship is going to sail here and there, and you might feel like you are losing control, and you might feel like things are not going to work for you. But if you know what you want to achieve, what you want to work towards to, then I think it's possible. That's not the only factor. I think I would like to emphasize the power of networking. The power of networking, it could be professionally, or with your community, or anyone that could be supportive to get that help and support and coaching and mentoring to achieve, or what, and again, to kind of like understand what is required, and also get support that one might want. And so that networking is quite required. Succeeding in a country like Canada, where it's not, when everything is unfamiliar, the culture is unfamiliar, the language could be quite unfamiliar, the systems could be quite unfamiliar, and so patience is required, right? So people need to exercise patience and give time, and they should give themselves a gift of kind of being patient and accepting that their journey might take some time. But again, if they are committed, and if they are dedicated, and if they have the right networks, and also if they are able to meet the required expectations that the systems are requiring them to do, then so that means flexibility. I had a hard time, like I thought I was going to do another master's, to become a psychologist, and I was kind of quite willful. I'm not going to do another degree, but I was quite lucky that I was able to take only 3 courses at the University of Calgary. So sometimes some people might need to take another degree, right? So they should be flexible, they should be willing, and they should be open. They should be quite accepting of what's the reality and what's going on. And with those sort of openness and radical willingness, I think people can achieve what they want to achieve. I believe that's something that's possible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You put it so well, Solomon. Like the recipe to succeed was very well put together. Thank you so much. And yes, that is so true. One needs to be flexible, open-minded, patient, link it to your own personal values, goals. Absolutely. Yeah. And it is a process, right? And person to
Yes.
person situation, many things contribute to how long it may take for you to be successful. But as you said, once you are committed and dedicated, Canada is a land which will help you, irrespective of all these barriers, to succeed, right? And as immigrants and refugees, we have to accept that we need to prove ourselves here and commit to that journey. And then it does go upward for sure. And I think that's the positive thing. As systems and policies continue to change, we will still have to do that because that is the reality. Thank you so much for that. Is there anything else, Solomon, that you would like to add that I have not touched upon today?
No, I think we have covered, what we set out to talk today. And thank you so much again for having me in your show. And I would like to kind of encourage you and praise you to keep on doing this work. Because again, I think we need to reach out more, more people, more, community members. And so one of the ways through which we can reach out is through, a show and a program and kind of a channel like this one. So I want to encourage you. It's not an easy work, but I would like to, praise you and encourage you to continue to do this. It's very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Solomon. Truly grateful for your time because I know how busy you are. So really appreciate you taking the time to coordinate with me and to be here today. Thank you so much.